Hi, everyone. It is the 3rd of September, 2019, and my name is Candace Krog-Goldman, and I am here with two ladies that I have been wanting to talk to for quite some time. Finally got around to scheduling it, and we are here today with the It's You Guru gals, Laura and Candy. Good morning, Laura and Candy. How are you doing?
Good morning. We're great. We're so excited to be talking to you too.
Yeah, really excited.
Yay.
When I emailed Candace about this, or we were emailing back and forth, and I was like, Candy, also a Candace, and Candace are the same card, the Six of Diamonds, if you follow cardology at all.
Well, let's start with that.
In the deck.
What is that? What even, let's tell our viewers what that is, because I'm not sure. I think I have a vague idea, but go ahead.
It is the combination of astrology and numerology, but it's based on the playing cards. So, there's the belief that we all chose our birth date and even our astrology chart. Well, we also chose the hand we were dealt.
Literally.
Yeah, that's a real thing. So you have your card, but it has a whole hand that goes with it. And our friend Paula has a website. It is kismet.com. And you can just Google her, Paula Kruger. Yes, like Freddy Krueger. And you'll find her stuff. But we always are looking up everyone's cards. It's like an obsession we have now. We're like watching TV and we'll look up an actor's card, or we'll look up like a person that's debating on the Democratic stage, their card. We're looking up everyone's all the time. So we, of course, when we became friends with you, I was like, let's find her birthday. And you guys have the same card.
Yeah.
And the guy that writes the main books says it's the most clairvoyant card in the deck.
I know, right?
Wow.
And the cool thing is I'm a 6 also, and 6s, if you look at the cards, the pips, the little symbols tell you a lot about the cards. So the 6s are parallel and they're facing the same direction. So they're striving to find balance, but they're also helping people find balance and walking between two worlds.
That one describes me for sure. And wow, well, how wonderful is that? So do you all practice this with clients, or,
I did for a little while, but here's the thing, Candace, when Candy and I are like Reiki masters, we're yoga teachers, we've done a lot of shamanic work, we've worked with the cards, but when we found BQH, we were basically like,
done. Like, this is our jam. Everything else, we're just putting over here.
Well, we incorporate it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's such a great thing to bring up. It's funny. I got an email just earlier this morning. There were some people a fellow who's interested in taking BQH and wanting to know about it. And he said, well, I'm having a session next week with a woman. Listen to what he said. A woman who combines QHHT and spirit releasement therapy. And I just kind of went,
Interesting.
that's BQH, right? Because with QHHT, they say you can't combine it with anything. And anyway, this is the reason BQH has become so popular, is because it says bring all your skills, bring all your wisdom. What did you learn from here or there? Bring all of that. And if you haven't learned anything yet, here's a great foundation. Here's a template for how you can get started, and then see where it goes from there. Well, what a supreme compliment. And from the minute you guys came onto the scene, I have been so interested in your energy, your vibe, and what you're bringing to this work. And we set up this session today to learn a little bit more about you and a little bit more about your practice, but also the adventure you just recently took to dimensions of disclosure. You sent me this text, I think I was like walking into the bank, and I look at my phone and I get a text from one of you that says, yeah, we're just sitting here talking with Alba. And I remember thinking, well, I'll be next to my computer in about an hour. Can we all maybe do this? But of course, schedules and all of that, and it just didn't work out. But I definitely want to hear about that. But why don't you start by telling everyone a little bit about how you got to where you're going, how it is that you ended up with BQH, and how it is we're even talking today, because I know some of our viewers would like to know a little bit more about you. Oh,
Sure.
Go for it.
Okay. Well, 2018 was a crazy year for both of us. And we had an interesting arrangement with a business coach. I basically put out to the universe, I wish someone would come in and tell me what my purpose here is. And I didn't put any qualifiers on it. And somebody came in to tell me what my purpose is. And they didn't necessarily have as heartfelt of an agenda as I had in my question. So we spent 2018 learning a lot about ourselves through this work. It was a lot of shadow work. And what we ended up kind of coming out on the other side of that, after a lot of unwinding and sort of questioning how we even got into such a situation, and really looking at the soul purpose behind it, and realizing the spiritual leap that we got as a result of it, we both independently started thinking about BQH. We were Reiki masters, and we were practicing on clients, and we would go through sessions, and at the end of the session, the client would be like, okay, now tell me what you saw, or tell me what you got. And we were always like,
I don't want to.
That's not the point of the Reiki session. And so after couple that with the experience that we had with this kind of crazy coach, and what we realized is everything we need to know is actually inside. We just have to get ourselves to a place where we can hear it and trust it. And then we did the BQH training, and we were like, holy F-bomb, like, this is it. So we came up with the name It's You Guru, because we really want to remind everybody that we work with, all of our clients, anybody that watches us, we're not the gurus. We don't have the answers. It's all about how you're finding your truth. Whatever means that is, if we say something that doesn't resonate, then chuck it. Like, only keep what does. So that's a really boiled down of how we found BQH, and we couldn't be happier.
Yeah, that was perfect. She's so good at that. So like, you do it.
She's the summarizer. That's terrific. You know, I want to say that I haven't caught all of your videos, but I've watched some of them. The first thing I'd like to say, just from a purely practical standpoint, thank you for not making like hour-and-a-half long videos. I don't know who has time to watch some of these.
We don't have time to make them.
I even do it on 2 times. I still don't have time.
I know. So I love the shorter content. I also really like some of the snippets that you show, and I like the way when you bring each other into the quantum bubble and do some of this. It's a brilliant way to show how some answers come, because they come often in either parables of stories or snippets or situations that are more visual, like, well, I see this, well, this is coming to mind, or whatever. And it's a beautiful way to let people know what actually might happen for them if they have a BQH session.
Yeah, thank you. Well, you know, you gave us permission to break the rules, and kind of felt that encouraging energy. So really what Laura and I do a lot of the times is, how can we take this amazing tool and use it in different ways? So that was kind of why we started putting each other in the bubble.
It was an accident the first time. I mean, I mentioned it in the concept of a surrogate session was part of the training, but we were practicing on friends at first, and I had a friend over, and she could not let herself go into just couldn't do it. And so, you know, about halfway through, she was like, I just can't do this. And I was like, hey, Candy.
I was upstairs.
Come down. You want to try this? And so I put Candy in the bubble. That's what we like to say, in the bubble, because we don't like the word under, because that just seems.
Thank you. Thank you. I never use the word bubble myself. This is kind of your term.
Go for it.
Can I use it?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Everyone can use it.
Yeah,
it was actually Christina Job's term. She's a friend of ours who did the training at the same time. She's in Indianapolis. She does BQH there. So if you're there, you should see her. But she's the one that said, to kind of originally put that, she's like, I see it as like this bubble. And then when I went in and we asked about it again, it was like it almost looked like a mesh, giant chicken wire, but made out of light bubble that gets constructed during the induction.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like honeycomb.
Yeah.
So, honeycomb. Oh my gosh, that gives me goosebumps, because honeycomb imagery has come up a lot for me, and Emoto and water and some of the session. And I think, boy, I'm getting some real downloads just from you guys saying that. Yeah, and some of this has to do with the way that we bring the water alchemy into the session, the way we set this session up, because we talk about creating that bubble with ourselves and our clients. And it's very specific too. It's specific to the situation. The practitioner who's there is a part of this, and how beautiful that you were able to assist your client. You know, I can't tell you how many years, again, another reason BQH was created. So how many years I practiced QHHT with, you know, the admonishment of all answers can only come from your client. And you might have been with this person 3, 4, 5 hours, and they're laying there absolutely frustrated in tears, while someone who's clairvoyant or have been doing this for a while can see their team, can hear their team that's beating her on the head, trying to give a message, and we're like, but I can't tell you.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, you know, they just, well, maybe we're in a place now where you can. And to qualify that statement as the instructor creator of this method, what I'd like to say is, in the course, what we say, and I still believe this with all my heart, give your client every opportunity to provide that information, because that's when it's going to be the most powerful. That is true. That is the epitome of the information coming from you. But if they are laying there in tears and in frustration, and they, you know, tried every which way, why not? Why not help them?
Why not? Yeah.
And then, you know, how many times have you done this? And then they've gone, well, I thought that's what I was hearing, but I was afraid I was making it up. And you're like,
don't mind.
Yeah.
And then it kind of gives them permission. They go, oh, that's all you're doing well.
Yeah. Well, and I think they think it's so much bigger than it really feels. Well, we had a client the other day, so we do a full surrogate session where we call it an assist, because one of us is in the bubble, the client's in the bubble, and then so the client gets the experience. So she was just experiencing this beautiful purple orb. And so we were like, do you want to answer the questions? Because she sent us like
100
questions. We're like, we're not going to get through all these. But she was like, you know, how important is it if you have the questions answered, and then, you know, versus having the experience? And she's like, I want both. So then she got into the feeling of the bubble, and she was like, I just want to stay here. Why don't you guys do the questions and deal with the questions? And then we've also had people who want to know, and this was more apparent at the beginning when Candy and I were first doing BQH on each other all the time, and now it's just collapsed. It's like just quicker, but it's the translation going up the chain, across to the other person, and then down, and then back up and across and back down. Or if it's you just in the bubble, it's going up and then back down. You can feel it like up, 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 up.
Yeah.
Up,
My
up, up.
first session, Laura did. She was really kind. The space that it took me to get answers out, like the pausing, because I would literally feel the question go up, and then I would feel a download of information come in, but I had to figure out how to get that information out in English.
That's hard. That part's hard.
And it was really hard. And I think we even got the visual that I had like collared myself, like actually put a collar energetically on myself so that I wouldn't get some of that information till I was ready. So we like had to remove the collar, and then it sped up a little bit, but now now there's a flow. Like the floodgates are open, but it can be difficult the first time.
Yeah. So to me, the more people do kind of like energetic work on clearing their chakras, clearing kind of their energy column, the easier that energy can kind of come down in. And then we had the benefit of, you know, practicing Reiki for a long time, and that just the confirmations that you would get where you'd be like, look, I don't know, there's something going on in your third eye. Like, were you baptized? And the person says, oh yeah, I did a baptism, or I went through baptism to try to save my marriage. And we're like, yeah, well, there's a big, huge block there. Yeah. So you get that confirmation, and then you're like, oh no, I am getting this information. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest problem, is they don't have the confirmation if they're new to this kind of experience.
Well,
and it just doesn't, go ahead.
I was gonna say, just the difference too between like creating something in your mind versus receiving something in your mind. Like, it's subtle, but
we were gonna make a video and send it to you. We haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
We can just talk about it now.
Right. Like, we talk about this a lot. Yeah. Like, I tend to dismiss things sometimes in the moment, like in regular life, because I'll be like, oh, it's just my imagination. But what we were talking about is how you have to like kind of work your imagination. Like there's some effort that goes into creating the story versus when it's a download or it's your higher selves, all of a sudden the story's just there and you're in it. And you're like, well, how did I get here thinking about this?
Yeah, so if you find yourself searching, then it's something different than if it's, absolutely.
Yeah, we're kind of describing daydreaming to someone and how you're like, okay, well, I'm at the beach. Oh, and now I'm laying on a towel. Okay, now I'm going out to the water. It's like this progression that you have to go through versus like a download would be like, boom, you're just seeing it. We probably are driving our higher selves crazy, but we go into BQH alone. We're like, let's ask again about the timeline for our experience at Dimensions of Disclosure and like their advice for us. And so they said, sit in the front if you really want to hear the speaker, but sit on the side so you can leave easily if you aren't so worried about it, because we have access to all the videos now. So we knew we were going to be able to watch anything we wanted to. And one time I was dozing off in one of them, and all of a sudden I was outside in the hallway, like my vision was out in the hallway, and I was like, Candy, we need to go. We ended up chatting with Rob Counts from Edge of Wonder forever because we popped out into the hallway and no one was out there.
Yeah, he was just standing there. So we just had this awesome conversation.
And that happened a lot to us. So we'd be like, okay, it's time to go this way. And then we'd run into someone and get to chat with them.
Yeah, they'd be like, anytime you feel like you need to leave the room, leave it.
Not a bad guy to run into. They've just now come into my awareness. They're popping up all over the place. In very interesting ways. I was, it's difficult for me to leave Kansas because of my situation here, but boy, did I feel like I was sending a piece of my energy stream out to that gathering with all of you. Tell us what it was like. First off, tell us, how did you even decide you were going to go, and what inspired you? Why did you go? Do you go to a lot of these things? Was this the first one, and why this one?
We kept saying it was the first one, but I mean, we went to Sedona Cosmic Awakening last spring, and that's close. Like they had David Wilcock speaking there. It's a more spiritually balanced conference, like more on the spiritual side than this Dimensions of Disclosure, which did have quite a balance, but it was more disclosure stuff than.
Yeah, so I followed David. I was on his email listserv, and he sent out an email about it, and we saw the speaker list. We saw David and Corey, good, and then we saw Sandra Walter was on it, and Elizabeth Wilcock.
And Laura Eisenhower. And Ben and Rob were hosting.
Right, so
and Jordan Sather was going to be there.
Yeah.
And James Gilliland. And
And we were kind of like, we looked at each other like, we should go. Like, it was the weirdest thing. I don't think I've ever not paused to consider whether I should go to something, and this I was like, we're going. Like, we just knew it, and we right there on the spot bought the tickets.
Okay, like we have to tell you the craziest story though. So we booked the hotel, and then we realized the conference started a lot earlier than we thought, so we needed to get there a day earlier. So we had to add another night to the hotel, and we called the hotel and they didn't have the conference room rate that first night, and it was really expensive.
Crazy.
So we're like, well, we'll just stay at the Comfort Inn across the street. So I booked that through Expedia. Okay, we get there at like 10 o'clock at night, 1 a.m. our time.
Well, before that, I had been sending one of my higher selves out. I tasked him, I was like, look, we really want this conference to go great. Here's a list of all the people that we want to meet, this or better. And we really want this trip to be like life-changing, to be significant. So like, you go do the legwork, like go.
Yeah.
So now we pull up to the hotel, 10 p.m., 1 a.m. our time, we're exhausted. And I go in and they go, we don't have your reservation. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And we look it up. I'm in the computer. They said Expedia called at 5 o'clock the night before and canceled it. And I was like, number one, when does Expedia call hotels? Never. He's like, I have a note right here. I go, that's weird. He goes, and we don't have any rooms. And I was like, oh crap. So we go over, we're like, well, we'll just go to the other hotel and we'll go across the street and see what they say. So Candy goes in there, and meanwhile, I'm on hold with Expedia.
So yeah, I walk in and they're like, how's your night going? I was like, well, it was really good until just about 10 minutes ago when we found out that our room across the street got canceled. We're here for the conference, but you couldn't get me in tonight when I tried to make that arrangement over the phone. I'm really hoping maybe something's changed. She's like, we've got you. So they like put us in, we got the first night rate. Like we didn't have to change rooms. It was so seamless. And so we went up, dumped our stuff off, went down to the lobby, and the first night met this amazing guy, Axel from Canada, and then ended up chatting with Ben from Edge of Wonder for a long time. And
Simon Esler, who's you're gonna start hearing about him because he is awesome.
He is. So we just had like this really quiet, chill opportunity to start meeting these people that then influenced who we talked to, what sessions we sat in, what we heard. Like we went to some sessions that we wouldn't have gone to otherwise that were amazing. So it was just really synchronistic.
But who made that call? Some human being called.
I know, I haven't let that go at all. Did you get on? I need to know more about this Expedia thing.
Expedia had first of all, I had gotten an email at 8:00 that night. How was your check-in? So there's no cancellation on my file. They have no record of calling, and they keep track of everything. They have like numbers for everything, numbers for cancellation.
I'm getting some real goosebumps here because cell phones and texting and some of this stuff, our team uses these things. I don't know, did you guys ever see, this is completely a different subject, but did you ever see the text message my husband got when Dolores Cannon was passing away? Did you ever see that?
No.
Oh my gosh, this is when it, I'd always kind of watched all of this and wondered how it happened, and this is when I went, they absolutely are using our cell phone. He was texting somebody that Dolores was working with, and he was talking to her about that. Not about her, but she was in the hospital. We didn't know that she wasn't as well as she was. Well, we knew that things weren't great. But anyway, he's texting her about some completely different thing. And on his phone comes a text. I'll share it with you guys. It says something like, bring her home right now, bring Dolores home, and then some stars, and then star 42, I think, or something, or asterisks, or I don't even know. I need to go look it up. I definitely have a screenshot of it. And so Tom is looking at his phone, and he says, he answered, it's a cryptic thing, but he thinks he's getting it from this woman who knows Dolores, right? So he's like, what? And so he says, okay. He didn't kind of know what to say about this, right? And a little while later, she responds and says, okay, what? Nothing's on her phone.
What? Oh, I have full body chills.
I know.
I know, nothing's on her phone, and it was just a handful of hours later that she left the planet. And I think she actually died in the hospital, and I think it may, I don't know, this is me guessing, but I think she probably was wanting so much to be in her own home, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't happen. She was in the hospital. And I think that message showed up on my husband's phone. Not on mine, excuse me very much. As far as I know, not on any of her families, but on my husband's telephone. But, it was absolutely about her. So that is so cool about Expedia because, Expedia doesn't make calls. They might, send a text or something in an email system, but they don't call anybody.
Well, no, and the next day, so the cancellation happened the day before we arrived. The day we arrived, they were sending her an email to ask how check-in was. So they clearly didn't think they had canceled the reservation.
Yeah, and we were like, oh my gosh, think of all these things that had to happen. And we were driving here's two more things that happened. We were driving out of LA to Ventura, and I was thinking about, I saw a truck, a big semi, and it was of the grocery store from Arizona, Bashas'. And the only reason we know that is because of our friends that are in Sedona, who, Rion De Ruin and Alexander Mazzone on Unite the Collective. We watch their videos every week, and they're just really strong, powerful guys, and
super positive.
They're so fun to watch. And I was looking at that, I was like, Candy, oh my gosh, there's a truck from Bashas', which is right by their houses in Sedona.
And I was like, oh, thank you. Because I was in my head in this traffic thinking, okay, look, the energy here is spunky, but nothing is coming with us. Nothing's getting attached. Nothing's bringing us down. We're keeping our fields clear. And if I need to call and help, I will. And then Laura says, look, Candy, there's a truck from Bashas'. I was like, okay, we're good.
And then we got behind, then a car almost sideswiped us. And I was looking at the plate and it didn't register in my mind. And then we lost the car, and then we came up behind it again. And I was like, Candy, that plate says 17, which is 17 in Spanish, which is 17, which is that number for Q, which all the disclosure people always are so upset.
I was like, well, I guess we're behind. I guess we have an escort to the Dimensions of Disclosure show.
Isn't it interesting? I know I talk about this in the BQH course because it's something that I really noticed in my life, but if you just pay attention, things that fly by, things that happen in your periphery, we all know about songs and things like that, but just really just everything. And, you know, we used to make fun of this in movies, that when the Native Americans would say something like, you know, black crows fly across North Lake mean whatever. And, you know, the gringos, you know, we would go, bah, ha, ha, and we'd laugh at them, right? But that's the way this is working.
Right. Well, what is that quote from Einstein? Either everything is a miracle or nothing's a miracle.
Yeah.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the way to live, huh? So, oh gosh, you know, I have to say, I wrote down the names because I love Laura Eisenhower so much. I have learned so much from Sandra Walter. Did you get to talk to either Laura or Sandra? I want to just go stand next to Sandra sometime. We don't even really need to talk, but I would like to talk to Laura. Like I would like to go blah, 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 blah. As a matter of fact, here, this is my little nod to Laura Eisenhower today. She puts her hair like this a lot with her curls. But those two gals, I mean, James Gilliland, I've heard a lot about him from Allison Coe, but those two gals, man. Yeah. You know, Sandra Walter's vibration is so high and she's so got it going on. And Laura
Eisenhower too. Yeah, Candace, she's also a 6 of diamonds.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Really?
For us.
Yeah. Wow. And that's amazing. And Laura Eisenhower, she's such a badass. She's just a badass woman. I'm like, I just have so much respect for her. What were their presentations like?
So Sandra's, we missed it because we were going to someone else's and we'd seen her before and knew that we could watch the video.
Well, get back to me on that.
Yeah, we did go to her meditation though. She had an 11:11 meditation on Sunday that she did in person. So we got to chat with her just a little bit. It was beautiful. Talk about feeling like you're in the bubble. I mean, it was lovely. Mm-hmm. But we did get to talk with Laura. So we went to one of her workshops and then got to chat with her one evening. And she's just so freaking smart. The stuff that she connects and the information that she embodies it's insane.
She was giving kind of a galactic history in the workshop that we saw.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of like, it's like, I don't know, like how Earth came to be basically. And it's so complex. I mean, I've heard it before a million times, but I can never remember the details, but
she just is up there rattling it off.
Yeah.
Like, from memory. And she's super funny. She was hilarious.
Yeah. That's where we ran into Alba, actually. We sat down and then Alba sat down next to us and I just turned to introduce myself because I'd seen her around, but I didn't know I didn't put it together. And then I introduced myself and she said her name and then I had to ask her to repeat it. And I was like, Wyman? And she laughed. She's like, I usually don't get greeted with my last name.
And we were like, hey, nice to meet you. Funny to see you here.
Yeah. Yeah. And Alba, of course, is a member of the Quantum Healer Support Forum community and has been for many, many years. I had the distinct pleasure of watching Alba first come into some of Dolores' classes years ago. And she took to this work like a duck to water, as the world knows. Amazing. So you guys were telling me about some of the unknown people. I mean, now those, we kind of touched base there about who we know already, but tell me about a couple of these speakers that really struck you and you wanted to talk about today. And these were people that I did not know, and I didn't go look them up because I want to hear from you first.
Yeah, we didn't know them either before this conference. So
should we start with Simon?
Yeah.
So the first one we met was Simon, who we met that first night we got there. And his whole presentation was what he called metaphysical activism.
So his name is Simon Esler, E-S-L-E-R, and he's from Canada. And he is co-hosting a channel on YouTube called thegreatawakening.ca because it's their Canadian channel. But yeah, so go ahead.
Yeah, so he was pulling in some Law of One material and some things that Corey Good had talked about. And he was basically talking about how we are almost like he went back in history to kind of when we chose as a species to look at the world through pluralism, which is how Western medicine ended up looking at things divided. It's like even anatomy looks at your leg separate from your hip, separate from your shoulder, and how that much that's affected us and how focused it made us on the physical world only, and how we need to be looking at these other realms, the astral, the etheric, to really pull down information so we can affect our lives in a more positive, better way.
Yeah.
And so he was kind of talking about how kind of like when Candy calls in, right, to the universe and she's like, hey, can someone help me? Be specific.
Yeah. Can someone of a very light, high vibration help me? Which I did not say.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he talked about free will, which I thought was really an interesting concept.
Yeah, he's like, how did we get to this place?
Right. Like,
we're a free will planet. How is it controlled? Basically, was his question.
Yeah, and he covered it from a couple different perspectives. Like the whole, well, one of them is not making a decision. So you don't have to be thinking negative thoughts. You can also just be stuck and not making a decision. And that puts a crack. You know, like if you can't decide to go right or left and you're just sitting here, especially if you're like, I wish someone would tell me what to do. Somebody's going to tell you.
Yeah, it's an invitation.
Yeah. So that's one way that free will.
That's a really important point to make right there. So, you know, really that's, and so many of us talk about, you know, if it doesn't resonate, you know, and some people are only ready for so much, but you know, that indecisiveness is a little more tricky than we might think. It's not neutral, is it?
No,
it's not. And the other concept that he brought forward was really interesting too, about us wanting to learn.
Oh, right. So the overall point was that we're here to have an experience and to learn and grow. And the like negative energy can use that. Like they found a loophole and it was like, they want the catalyst to learn and grow. And that's how I called him in. So Candy and I are two different people, even though we don't act like it. So Candy called him in, but I also stepped in and participated. But what I wanted out of it, I know deep down, I was always curious. Could I clear as much junk as possible and live as light as possible on this planet? And what would that be like? And it's like part of me just knew that calling this guy in was going to help with that. And a part of me knew I had the benefit of knowing that he was going to disappear out of our lives with not much of a kerfuffle at some point in the future.
Which I did not have
Candy did not have that benefit.
But I didn't realize it though. We both called him in from the two perspectives that Simon was talking about. Because I was at a standstill, indecision, just wanting someone to tell me.
And I was like, oh yeah, give me that work. Give me that clearing. And I will say from before that experience to after, my level of joy is so much higher than it was before we started with him. So that's the loophole is like, because we're here to grow and we need catalyst to grow, they create the catalyst. That energy can kind of create that catalyst.
Yeah. And I likewise trust myself way more, and I'm on my purpose. Like, he didn't get me there. As a result of my work with him, I realized this is what I like doing. This isn't. This is who I want to be. This isn't. This is how I want to live my life. And like now, the past year that I'm like, how am I fine now?
And the other thing is, our fans are so saying this way. We're not doing this. We're doing it this way. You know, and you have to do that. But I think for me, I would have been like, no, we said we were going to do it this way. We're going to do it. So we're going to we said this, we're going to do it, instead of just being like, no, this doesn't feel right for me.
Moving with the flow is what it is. You know, you guys are talking a lot about contrast. You know, I think sometimes, and clients are like this too. I just want to be happy. No, you don't. Not really. You want some balance, but if you are if everything's rainbows and sugar cookies, that's going to get old really quickly and you don't grow. You know, what you want is kind of an upward trajectory like this.
That's spiral.
But we need contrast, and I was saying this you guys are so fun to pop in and watch my little YouTube live earlier this morning. I was talking a little bit about being bedridden with my pregnancies. I mean, it was excruciatingly hard, especially the second time when I had a toddler and I was in bed for so much longer. I am forever grateful for that 5.5 months of being completely dependent on everybody else and having absolute dreams of just running down hospital corridors. I'm like, I'm free. Anyway, I got to learn about what it's like to be dependent. I know what it's like to face hours and weeks and months in bed, and my compassion for that body state is off the charts. And I'm telling you, you can't just guess what that's like unless you're there. You can kind of look at it and think, well, I can imagine. Well, you can approach imagining it. But until or unless you are in that situation, you just don't know. So some of this is so great the way you're talking about it, Candy, about, now right? Yeah. Now you can see it, and now it is very, very clear because of the experience that you have. And
yeah, and now I think our BS detector is really off the charts.
It's on point.
Yeah, let's talk about that just briefly. So I think these experiences are doing that. I also think I've been watching it. It's kind of like, I don't watch TV, but for some reason this keeps coming up because it is something I've seen. Have you seen that Claritin ad? That Claritin, it's like, it's a allergy medicine, and it'll show someone outside and it'll say, here, be clear with Claritin. And then the screen kind of wipes and suddenly you thought you were looking at something that was clear until it really became clear. It's like cleaning the windshield or whatever. It had this fog across it and this dirt. I think that's what we're doing as humans. What do you ladies think?
Yeah, without a doubt. I feel like it's almost like tuning the dial to the radio station, right? So I think sometimes the human box that we get in is, oh, well, if I can just tune it to that radio station, then it'll be tuned and then I'll be good to go. But the challenge or the opportunity is that we should always be moving forward on our path, right? So when you think about driving through the mountains, the radio stations come in and out, you're constantly having to tune that dial. That's how life should be. It should be this constant adjustment and attunement and checking in with yourself. Is the decision that I made yesterday still resonate today? Like, it can be that quick of a change.
Right. Well,
you're not locked in.
Right. And it's interesting because I'm like have 70,000 thoughts in my head, but David Wilcock during one of his presentations was talking about how he was like just talking nonstop about December 21st, 2012. And then nothing really seemed to happen.
Yeah, he had all these predictions, thought all this stuff was going to happen, and none of it did. People got really pissed at him.
Right. And they stopped listening to him, I think.
Yeah.
And what he told us was, we have a twin star in Centaurus, twin star, like another sun that's our twin sun. And there's a scientist who thinks that they're these suns that are like paired together. And they figured out that on December 21st, 2012, there was a solar flash on that star. That star had a solar flash, a big, huge one.
Yeah. So what he was getting was accurate information. It was just a little off from, like, it wasn't our Earth and our sun. It was this other planet and sun, which were our twins. So for him, he's like, oh, thank God, he felt better because he was getting this information that just felt so accurate. But it is about perspective. You can be a little off, but still be right. And then it's, what do you do with that?
Right. But then I think, like, so for us, unwinding some of the programming that we were involved in with that coach, we had a friend of us say to us, one of our friends in Sedona say, 75% of what he told you was accurate and helpful and good, and 25% was not. So if you look at everyone like that, we tend to dismiss someone. Like, people quit listening to David Wilcock because of all that, but he may still have good information.
Right.
So that whole 100% no thing is not beneficial.
Yeah. And it really, we notice it in the disclosure community, well, in any community, but because we were just at this event with the disclosure community, where we tend to want to put things in categories. Like, this group of people is good, this group of people is bad, this information is good, this information is bad, when really we just live on a spectrum of gray. I mean, if you know something to be true and you feel it in your heart, like if that happens to me, then it shouldn't matter if Laura disagrees, because her truth and my truth can be totally different, and we can be observing the exact same situation.
Well, and it also goes to that kind of, Magenta Pixie has talked about this, and they talk about it in the law of one a little bit, which is looking at things in a multidimensional perspective. So that's what we like to do with we kind of changed the video formats that we're doing, but
Shocker.
we're now asking what we love to pay attention to the news and to politics because we're sixes and we're bridging two worlds, right? And I'm not affected by the news anymore. I used to be, it used to stress me out and make me sad or angry. That is the phase I had to go through, past it. So that's nice. So we can talk about the stuff without being triggered. But we like to ask in BQH, what's a different, higher perspective? Like, for example, is Google evil? We ask that.
Yeah.
Because everyone thinks Google is like the devil's child now in the disclosure community.
And here's where being in the quantum bubble, having a BQH session is amazing because the filters that I had in my logical mind, like I had kind of already made up a decision in my head, but I was like, let's BQH it just to see. The information that we got in BQH was completely different than what my logical mind had already decided. And
tell us, what did you learn? You give us a synopsis of this because this is fascinating.
Well, I made Laura ask me twice. I was like, ask me that again. What we got was that the individuals were well-intentioned, like the ones that we've heard were manipulating the search results or were overwriting or changing or have this, blacklist of terms that if somebody searches on this, then give them this information instead. Or we deem this to be real news and this to not be real news, so put these alternative channels down and these main channels up. What we got was that the people at Google legitimately thought that they were helping the public, that people maybe they don't know better, they don't have time to do all the research themselves, so let's give them trusted sources that used to be trusted sources, that have traditionally been trusted sources.
One of these perfect examples is cancer cure is one of the phrases that was on the list. So
Yeah.
like to Sleeping Beauties, there is no cure for cancer. To the rest of us, we're like, you can take care of that if you really want to.
Right, you can heal yourself.
Yeah. So they're taking the alternative health stuff and bumping it down and then putting the mainstream health stuff up. But they think they're helping people because they legitimately believe there is no cure.
Right. And so then it pulls up a little bit further because Laura's like, well, is there anybody there that's working with the cabal? And so we pull up and look out, and the information that I got was, if they are, they don't know it. They have money and power, and they're trying to do something good. They have an intention that is not ill, but because maybe they're not making a decision in a certain place, or maybe
there's that thing again.
Manipulated a little bit.
So you can start, like, because we went through that whole experience, we can start to see that in people too.
Yeah.
And I mean, I mentioned it to one of the people at the conference, and I was like, I don't even know what we were talking about. We were telling her about our business, and I was like, we went in and we asked about, is Google evil? And she goes, I think we know the answer to that. And I was like, well, it's more complicated.
Wait a second. Yeah. I mean, maybe you need to ask, and maybe it's that contrast thing too. It could be all kinds of things. That's why I'm very hesitant with clients or as an instructor or, assistant to other teachers to make these declarative statements that things are always one way and written in stone. I think for me personally, when I see people making these in stone statements that things are always this way, only this way, and it can only ever be this way, that's my ticket to either pass or I don't know, I'm like, okay, maybe they've got more learning to do, but things are just not in hardly any way, I think, black or white. There is all kinds of shades of gray. You can be looking at things.
Well, when I came out of the session then and was like, okay, so now I have a new perspective on Google. Even though that perspective was my perspective, it was a higher one that hadn't kind of made it down into the body. So now I can bring that in and I can choose to look at things slightly different and have that in my awareness now.
But also being aware that they are doing that.
Yeah.
And so maybe use DuckDuckGo if you want. I actually pulled up Cure Cancer on both Google and DuckDuckGo, and the results are very different.
Yep.
So, being aware that that's happening is good because then you have another option.
Right.
So that reminds me of, the second guy that we saw was Mike Waskowski. And he actually has a new app. It's called Mass Meditate. And it basically holds a bunch of meditations, like Sandra's are on there. And it reminds you that it's time to do Sandra's meditation. Then you can go into the app and watch the video.
Yeah, or you could go in and search, like I want to do a clearing meditation, and it'll bring up all the meditations that are in there that focus on clearing. It's pretty cool.
But speaking of boxes you put yourselves in, he listed a bunch of boxes, our limiting beliefs. And I just thought, this was one of the things I wanted out of this coach, when all that was happening, was like, how many beliefs can I get rid of? And then I realized how many I still have, which there's religious beliefs, personality, channels that you believe all the stuff the channel says, other people, just believing what other people say, stuck with your experiences that you've had. And it's tough because that's a double-edged sword, right? It's like you've had these experiences and you can help people then based on your experiences. So you get rid of your experience, then it's, we're in duality. So all this stuff is there to help kind of guide us. Achievements and personal contacts and connections. This one's a big one. Status, starseed origin, astrological sign, your card.
Yeah.
Future outcomes, and then thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And I'm like, well,
that's everything.
That's everything. But it just made me think, oh yeah, you do kind of, but we're supposed to know ourselves, right? And all this stuff is helping reflect to like understand ourselves better.
Yeah, it comes back to that spiral, right? Like, so if I'm an Aquarius 6 of diamonds, then that might be a starting point to get to know myself. But then at some point I get to bring in my experiences to decide, does everything about those labels still fit, or can I see maybe a new perspective within those labels? Because everything has a high side and a low side.
Yeah.
And we have the opportunity to resonate at different levels and different frequencies all the time.
Right. Or I think the other thing is, it's like you can be aware, okay, I'm an Aries, and that means that sometimes I have this behavior, but a lot of people use it as a crutch, right? Like, well, I'm just an Aries, and so I can't, even with that.
So I did 10 years of therapy at one point in my life, and I knew my triggers forwards and back. Like, I knew them in my head. I had intellectualized all the therapy. So I would get in relationships and be like, well, you can't do this because that's a trigger and you don't want to trigger me.
Oh, goodness.
That's a no-no. By the way, that's a no-no.
But that's our society right now.
Yeah. So then we started working with shamans, and they actually like went to the heart. So you go in and you find the core of the trigger, and you basically remove it. Like, you allow the energy body to heal. You integrate that part of yourself. And I remember the first time I was in a situation where I was like, oh, here we go, I'm about to get triggered. And the moment came and went, and I was like, oh my God, nothing happened. I'm free. That trigger's gone. And then I had the breakdown because the trigger was gone. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be a normal person.
Hey, I love that you brought this up. May I ask you this? Because I know many of us out there have had extended therapy, traditional counseling kind of, situations. Now that you've experienced that and you're doing BQH for people, how do you think about that? I mean, there's this concept too that has been perpetuated in the quantum healing community that you only need one session ever, and then everything's fixed and everything's all done. And sessions can be life-changing. There is just no question about it. There can be spontaneous remissions of illnesses. There can be complete leaps of positivity and great changes. But it can also be smaller changes or things that happen a little more gradually. But it's not just one or the other, but it's not an every week thing either. So what's your perspective on the differences between traditional therapy and having something like a quantum healing session using BQH?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, the difference between traditional therapy and anything in the energetics, whether it's BQH, shaman work, energy work, whatever, is the therapy that I experienced, at least, was a lot of labels and a lot of diagnosis and a lot of giving me tools to cope around the issue. Whereas I think in BQH and any of the energetics, you're actually working more towards going to the heart, to the source, and allowing that to release and giving it love and compassion and kindness. And almost like there's a lot of kind of reparenting, reintegration, soul retrieval. Like, when you're able to see yourself from that higher perspective, see maybe something horrible that happened, but see it from all the different angles and how everyone was just trying to do their best. And ultimately, this really bad situation can lend itself to all this amazing healing and growth. It's just such, I have goosebumps. It's such a different way to look at your humanness and why you came to be here. And then you add in the fact that we both believe that we chose this path. Like, things don't just happen to you. you chose to have this experience. You know, you chose to incarnate in this life with this family in this place. You have choices, but every choice you make is still a choice. Then the healing, just for me, the healing happens so much quicker. I mean, we did work with shamans on and off for about 2 years, but we went so far past what I was talking about in therapy that like, I still get triggered, but it is so small and so different than how I used to and how I used to react, and how quickly I'm able to be like, oh, that triggered me. Ooh, I have some work to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about, so like, we're also always working on trying to become like opening our third eye up more and kind of bringing more skills online. And still, I'm like, I cannot figure this out. So we have to go into the quantum bubble to figure it out, because you just cannot get your doubt mind or your like emotional body or whatever to just be quiet or get out of the way so that you can get that higher perspective. So we'll have like whatever come up. Candy's been dealing with an issue with one of her puppies, her bubs, not a puppy, full grown dog, gigantic, but she's going to have to rehome him. And we've done a lot of BQH sessions trying to figure out what's the problem. Why is this not working? You know, what's so shaky for him? And we've gotten crazy stuff we've never would have figured out on our own. So that, I think, because when you're down in the weeds, I mean, that's hard. Candy's been really emotional about him, and you can't pull yourself out of that and be like, oh no, I'm going to talk to my higher selves about it and be crying in the middle of it. Like, those are two different frequencies.
Right. Yeah. But the information, when we do ask about it, the information that we would get is so clear and so calm, and from a perspective that takes both Solomon, my dog, and me, my heart, into consideration. It's something that my logical mind might have hoped to get to, but probably wouldn't have gotten there so quickly and so succinctly. And then we come out and it's just so obvious then the steps that need to be taken in real life.
Well, so I look at the experience of going into the quantum bubble, it's training. I mean, you can be doing Reiki training, or you can be going in to get BQH sessions. I mean, you can do both too, clearly, free will, but it's just another level of training your whole self, your energy body, your mind, your emotions, your heart, to go to the next level. Because the more you're in it and the more you're practicing with it, it's the more you're getting used to that frequency.
So that strengthens that connection.
Yeah.
We did an experiment that actually, it was Laura and I and Christina, our friend that we mentioned earlier, all BQH practitioners. We like to play. And so we were driving from Sedona to Phoenix when we were there for our conference. And I was driving the car, and Christina's like, let's see if we can go into the bubble now. Like, if we can connect, if we can feel the energy. So I'm driving, obviously, my eyes are open. My brain still has to be engaged. And she started, we kind of talked ourselves into this relaxed state. And she started asking questions, and I could feel the bubble. I could feel the connection. And I could feel that same presence that I talked to in the quantum bubble while I'm driving. And I was like, this is amazing. So it's like a muscle, right? Like you're strengthening that muscle every time you use it.
Yeah. So for people looking to do BQH sessions, yeah, definitely. If you're wanting to have more access to your higher selves and work on clearing the energy, that's what you're doing. You're practicing and getting, yeah.
You know, I love what you were saying. And as you're talking about going into the bubble, I'm remembering the morning in 2016 when I got the call that my mother had suffered a stroke, and I was heading into town driving, and it was early in the morning, and I didn't know what I was going to find. And I was, you can imagine that I didn't have enough information, and I'm driving along this highway. And at the time, I remember thinking, I wish, because I sometimes spend time talking in meditation to my team, but often to my teacher, Dolores Cannon, whom I love so much. And I remember thinking, I was driving, I remember thinking, gosh, I wish a little bit I could have had some time to connect and chat with you a little before heading into town, but I can't really do that. I'm driving. And two things happened. One was almost immediately, I'm going and I'm in a 65-mile-an-hour zone, but I'm headed to the hospital. So I'm kind of pushing it past 65. I'm going that fast. Do you know that a cardinal comes by and like grazes my windshield, and then I hear Dolores say, "You can talk to me wherever you are."
Oh, chills again.
And it was astonishing. And and I know that she's just part of my team, but she was, she's very, a very identifiable part of the access that I have to hire. And, but people right now thinking about hypnosis and other things, you can't do that while you're driving. You can't do these sessions online, these fears, these beliefs and everything. And you know what? Here's the thing. Maybe it used to be that way, right? And maybe we're getting to where we can access these other energies in these other ways without going into a complete somnambulistic level, without completely kicking our conscious mind and awareness to the curb. We can do this. This is what we're doing as we are ascending, which is actually, my sense has always been we're bringing more of that here. It's more available, like you said. It's easier to go up and down that path, and that's really beautiful.
We had one of those shamans that we worked with. She said she could never quiet her mind in meditation, and I have the same problem.
Ditto.
But I think that's also an old. There's a point, like if your life is chaos and that's the only place you can get quiet, that's one thing. But that's kind of an old, the man sitting up on the mountain meditating for 8 days straight to become enlightened. We're multidimensional beings. So there's all this activity happening up here, and the more you start to tap into it, the more that you've got kind of going at the same time. And you should be able to be talking to your higher self at the same time you're talking to a person. At the same time you're like eating a banana.
Yeah. Think about how many times we drive from point A to point B and we are completely tuned out of the drive. Like we're having our own, we're at the meeting that we're driving to, or we're rehashing a discussion from the night before. So we're doing two things at once already. But if something were to jump out in front of us or we needed to slam on the brakes, we would. Like the brain kicks back in. So the same thing happens with the BQH. We are multidimensional. My best meditations are at the gym on the elliptical. The faster I get my heart going, music blasting in my ears, and all of a sudden it becomes crystal clear, and I have the most amazing meditations.
Right.
Well, I wish you could teach that one to me, because I don't think I can say that that's a familiar thing for me to say.
Yeah, that's tough. I'm amazed that you can do that. I'm like, I need to be out on a mountain. That's where I need to be, is to get the clear energy. Yeah.
This has been amazing, but we've been together for an hour already, ladies. Let me ask you this. Would you like to pop online and chat with me again sometime soon? This has been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed the energy in our discussion today. And I want to thank all of those who have joined us live on Facebook today. And I'm going to get my act together and figure out how to do this live on Facebook or on YouTube with other people. It's going to happen, I promise. And maybe we can do it there as well. So again, to find Laura and Candy, go to itsyouguru.com and check them out. Check out their videos. Check out their YouTube channel. They've got amazing things. They're a lot of fun, always pleasant, always upbeat. And I'm so glad that you two found BQH and are part of our Quantum Healers community. I enjoy you thoroughly. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Candace.
So much.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. Until next time, have a really great Tuesday. Bye, everyone.